Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Lorraine Neidhart, and you are at Venus Unplugged. And what we do here on Monday mornings is explore the archetypal realms of Venus, her beauty, her revenges, her psychological depths, how she moves the culture further, or she's held back and culture doesn't get to do much. That I'll talk about at another point. What we're looking at in the last couple of weeks is the tarot cards of the major arcana, these archetypal images that can be used for meditation, for talismans. Even if you know nothing, zippo, nothing, your psyche knows what these mean and what they mean to you, and that's the beauty of the symbolic language to each person. I mean, there's a general kind of meaning, but how we interpret it and how we live it is how we experience the meaning. Meaning needs to be experienced. And what we're working with here is, without psyche, you can neither know nor believe. And I was thinking about this, and I thought, wow, wait a second. Venus, our beloved Venus, the archetypal Venus, who is not just in the realm of love, but she is the principle of all relatedness. She was the one who initiated psyche, and that story is told in the myth of Eros and Psyche. You can read the book She by Robert Johnson, and he has a wonderful interpretation. And I think the episodes I did on Eros and Psyche probably are still up. I hope you can find them on. I was going to say U-Tunes. So obviously I'm so merged with the unconscious right now. So this should be interesting. Whatever comes out of my mouth, believe me, is coming from some unknown source because I'm not even awake yet. I'm still in dream time. So the moon, we're talking about the moon, that profound orb that tells us so much that the sun cannot reflect without the moon. Her power is not just in her phases, but in her reflection. There really would be no movement because there would be no magnetic field. So it's kind of like the sun and the moon kissing, and everything starts changing. So this card said, let's say you're having a difficult emotional time, or even more important, if you are aware that there is a regressive pull back into the unconscious, back into childhood. This is the constant challenge of growth. The mother complex is always pulling us back to her. And we don't want to be children forever, hopefully. But that is what happens. And then the next minute somebody says something and we're triggered and we're 5. Or we're not honoring them. The 5-year-old, not literally, but the young and developing soul, the consciousness of our soul. Psyche is our soul. And we have a nightmare or something happens in the outer world to have us realize, like, uh-oh, this is not going to fare well if I don't wake up, or if I don't do something, or if I don't stand down or stand away, or, the moon is going to put you in a state, in an emotional state. And sometimes at first it's paralyzing because we don't know what it means. Like, what does that mean? Well, it means stop, look, and listen. Ladies, my 2 mouths are acting like the sun and the moon, and I don't know what they're doing. So what we need when we look at this moon or tarot card of the moon, she is, very often the symbol is that of the dark of the moon. right before the new moon, right before there's new beginnings. On the dark of the moon, for those that are in astrology, know that that is the time where the secrets come out. Or for those that are not in the highest level of consciousness or using negative magic to get what they want. Yeah, they'll get what they want, but read the fine print. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going to come along with that. So better take your time and earn it consciously. Then it's yours for eternity. So with this moon card, this beautiful, profound moon, is she maiden or is she menace? Sometimes she's the both at the same time, so we need to look at that. But the symbol, it is when we're called, and that is always the challenge, when we are about ready to make a shift in our life, whatever that may be, okay, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, there is always a regression. We have a nervous breakdown before the new job, or we're paralyzed before we're going to write that page, or we are, emotionally unreasonably demanding and want our beloved to mother us, and he doesn't know what the hell we're talking about. That's all if we could just not judge it, but have the observer. We all have an observer. There's always, it's a rather strange and marvelous image, this observer, who is observing, not judging, just observing. You see, and if we could call on our observer and say, okay, well, while I'm flipping out and or being unreasonable without reason, but when you're connected to the moon, that is her reason. It's Psyche's reason. It's psychological. It's not intellectual. The ways of the heaven or the ways of the underworld are perfect, as Inanna says in the Sumerian myth. So with this, when we're working with the moon energy, or the tarot card of the moon, and we need to get clarity. We need to not be pulled back into the unconscious where the mother complex says, no, my little darling, don't grow. Stay dumb and dependent forever. Or, no one will ever love you but your dear old dark mama. And in a way, that's true. And when we leave this planet and we go to eternity, we can all get together. But at this moment, the performance piece is about separating from sometimes the ill advice that we've received from the mother or the feminine. Well, my mother said, and what was her experience? Well, her mother told her. Well, now you're about 200 years behind at times. And it's not that there's not deep, profound feminine wisdom, but that takes a lot of consciousness to be in touch with that. Now, of course, Lilith, the first wife of Adam, is the dark of the moon, too. So we also connected with these primordial forces. Lilith was also the serpent. She was the prime evil force that brought consciousness to Eve. Eve chose to become conscious. Adam was just going to hang out in paradise forever. It's a hilarious little book by Mark Twain. It's about the Garden of Eden, and it's all about Adam moaning and groaning about this strange being that keeps on naming everything, and he's going like, no, I'm in paradise, and she's like, no, it's Niagara Falls, and he's like, how do you know it's Niagara Falls? It's adorable. But okay, so that was, I went there. I went to Niagara. So I am back again. So with this moon card, or this state of the moon, you must stay on your chosen path. Trust your intuition. And at your darkest hour, you'll find that you hold your own light. Use your own light to overcome your fears. And shedding light on your own reality or your own psyche. See, all the advice that is around us can help or harm. But at that dark of the moon, or if we need to really be independent, we take what we need from the elders, and then we kind of sort it out. Remember, that's Psyche's first task, because she has to sort the seeds. Well, this is very much when we are about ready to make kind of a quantum leap in consciousness, or a quantum leap in maturity, because that's really what consciousness is. It's a movement towards wisdom. Individuation is the ever arduous task of becoming whole and who you truly are. It's not a goal. It's a lifetime's work. To me, it's the only high adventure that's worth your entire life. And it's going to take your life anyway, so if we make it conscious, that means we become aware. Something's pulling me. I want to get back into bed, which sometimes is a good thing. Or I want to regress, or I don't want to look at that. I don't want to hold the accountability for projecting my shadow onto somebody else, like with the rage that we do. And that doesn't mean that we can't objectively see somebody else's shadow. But if we do, got news. There's a piece of you in that, and that's a wonderful reflective light. Like, whoa. I know where that person is at, because I've been there too. And so rather than making it a war or having them carry the burden, we pull back our gold, because, the dark shadow has gold in it. Always. That's what the alchemist knew. So with your moon card, and you reflect on that, you meditate on that, you walk around with it, you will begin to understand, that it's a reflective light that propels you towards self-understanding, strength, and confidence. But that's very important to understand, because the true feminine psyche is not, we can jump into that crystal clear intellect, all of that understanding. That's not the true feminine way. We're more reflective. We're more about weaving. And then out of that weaving, we can come to, a conclusion, or the ego can bring some awareness. But the true feminine, which is sometimes what is so frustrating for men, because it's like, we're going with this, and we're not quite sure. It's like, just get on the wave and ride. And, because you're also communicating with his feminine, with his anima figure, and what's going on. So, the shadows and the monsters that are in the reflective light, that are in our fears, that are in our ugliness, that's in poverty and sickness and pain and death, which is actually not painful, that's the release. These are the unexpected trials and tribulations that block the flow of the river of life. These are the monsters of the moon. But these monsters are also mysterious. So with the moon card, by the time you get ready to really work with that one, you've already experienced quite a lot of shadow and light and monsters and false prophets and devastating crises. And as I said, as you're going down in a crisis, if you could just, write it on a slip of paper, or have it tattooed on your ass or something, this is good. This means you are about ready to make a change, and everything is up in arms. drawing you back, and you say, no, I'll just stand here if I need to. I'm not going back. Or like, if one is in a relationship that keeps on breaking up and going back and breaking up and going back, it's not necessarily love. It's that, wow, psyche is pulling you back there because that person has something, usually something you should never go near, and you have to go near it 10,000 times till you really feel the fire or the sadism of the narcissistic character disorder. They're not going to love. They're too wounded. But it's also interesting in the story of Narcissus. Everybody knows that he's hanging out at that pool, but at some moment he has some brief, just a little touch of revelation, and he actually his roots go down into Hades, where Persephone is. So there's a shift in his reflections, and then up comes the daffodil or the narcissist. There's a flowering. So the myth is always hints at profound tasks that the moon in you knows. So when you're working with the moon card, you begin to, you can also, with the moon card, you can also call on the ancestors. Artemis is, or Diana of the Hunt, but also Hecate. People who are afraid of darkness will see Hecate as evil, but she's not. It's just the dark of the moon. It's just what you can't see. And she creates a lot when we're not looking. So the moon connects us to emotions and psychic upwelling from the sphere of the physical body, aches and pains. That psyche telling a story in our body. And if we don't get identified with the pain and begin to look at it, what's really going on here? What is this living story? And very often, if we have the inferior function of sensate, everything's going to happen in the body because it's the place where we're least aware. So remember, individuation occurs through our inferior function. It's like a game of Dungeons and Dragons within. So when you're working with this moon card, it's a portal to new consciousness. And you can stand at this gateway to beauty or the gateway of light or higher consciousness. See, in consciousness, I'm not so sure about that higher or lower. I think it's more expanded. Higher and lower, that always hooks us into the hierarchy or heaven and hell, which is, I suppose I believe there's a hell, but I don't think anybody's in it. That's definitely a man-made construct. We have an infinitely creative, the divine is infinitely creating, and they're going to do a pocket of hell. Absurd. But that's part of what we're afraid of. Oh my God, I'm in hell if I go into the depths. No, you're just dumb. You just don't know. You need to be still, and you need to know that you don't know. That's one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. When you don't know, and that's good. That means you're in a whole new place, and the only thing that's off is you don't know. But Psyche knows. So we can either be still and wait for Psyche to give us a signal or a dream, or we can read and we can research, we can look up what are all these different symbolic meanings. We can dance, we can move the body, we can go into a state of play. So when you're working with the moon card, you're working with psychological changes. Psyche's changing. Psyche never creates a collapse or a disaster unless she has built a new and strong foundation within. She's not self-destructive. She's a creative principle. So even though we think we're drowning, nope, we're drowning in a bird bath, and we will be fine eventually. Now, that's the most annoying thing to say to somebody when they're suffering. Oh, you'll be fine. No, that's when we need the empathy. That's when we need to sit beside or with the person or imagine the person and their initiation rites and how excruciating, painful, and terrifying they were. But their psyche has initiated this, and their psyche will pull them out. And eventually your body becomes kind of like a light body. So when we're working with these forces, this eternal force that changes, it's the hands of divinity. They kind of reach down and they enfold you, and these are the seeds of wisdom and that are magically implanted. And you can never be where you were before. So there's always a loss. As much as we want something new and shiny, we're not getting anything new and shiny unless we can grieve. And that's a very important part. Grieving is a form of tribute to that what was. It's an honoring. It's a willing to be able to go down. It's like cleaning out your cosmic closets. So, since Venus was the one who initiated Psyche through her 4 tasks, we begin to recognize what the power of the moon in our own life. Now, for those that are into astrology, they know where their moon placement is in their chart is how they're going to relate to the moon. What is going to be the thing that, or the event, or the emotion. And very often the moon will bring up feelings that we don't even know what their name is. It's like, what the heck is this? What's this feeling? And then it's not this, it's not that. It's not depression. It's kind of like angst, but it's really not angst because I'm watching it. So when you are working with the moon within yourself, or the moon is calling you, that is the Great Mother in all her phases. So we need to be able to say, okay, Mother dear, I need to separate, or I need your loving breast. There's that whole myth that the Milky Way is the breasts of the Great Mother, squirting her breast milk, and that's what created the stars in the Milky Way, which is a very beautiful image. So she is both maiden in the sense that it's a virginal moon. When the new moon comes, I just realized. Also, when Persephone is dropped into the underworld or abducted into the underworld, she's the maiden. But she comes up queen of the underworld. Not bad for 6 months being in the underworld. So when we have this God, or we need to, or also let's say you want to call on Artemis. Artemis is she's the tranquil moon goddess, and she's the cousin and companion to Hecate, the black witch of the crossroads. Hecate's hounds. They tear the hero from limb to limb. They send him out kind of mad and crazy. And in that madness, and that frothing, which is also in alchemy, putrefactio, everything dissolves and stinks and becomes awful. And it's like, oh, God, that's my life. Yeah, well, yes, it is for that moment, but it's going to shift. So this image of the moon helps us descend into the depths and what they mean. And it sort of deprives us of our daytime knowing, or the daytime orientation. Or the one that says, I know. It's like, oh, no, not when you're under the Ides of the moon. So the alchemist knew that man's task was to redeem nature, its own nature. And this is also what the moon does. It puts us in touch with shadows and light. We need to use our instincts to travel through the moon, unless we use artificial light. And that's the whole problem. The light is artificial. And we can have artificial spiritual light. There is absolutely no truth in that little cliche. And there's nothing more annoying when somebody quips a cliche as if it's great wisdom. Put it down. Know nothing. It's more honest. Or just witness. But when people always, have their pet cliches and they have it for everything, they don't know nothing. But they want to sound like they know. So people, we respond to that. It's like, what'd you say that for? It doesn't make any sense. Isn't it an advertising campaign? So with this moon, we will be in a place where, when we can be still, when we can work with this, when we can see and be in the dark of the moon, and that doesn't mean literally up in the heavens of the dark of the moon. We can be in the dark of the moon in our own process. Nothing's happening. When nothing is happening, that is when the most is happening. When we think the most is happening, Zippo is happening. And that's one of the beauties of the Jungian work is, it's always moving. It's always enlivening. It's not like this is the rule, and in this rule, this is what we have to follow. So the language of psyche is not nailed down into one and one only possibility or one only meaning. So in the state of the moon, the flux of the moon, we are feeling the Dark Mother. Now, the Dark Mother can also be Sophia or the Black Isis. She can have wisdom. But we won't understand that wisdom until we're still. So when we cross the waters of the moon, we get in touch with nature itself. The green Isis is nature itself. So, unlike the sun, which is bright and dependable and warm, the moon is pale and inconsistent and cold. But it's a coldness that stills everything and awakens. So work with that this week. Listen to the other, or download the other segments from iTunes or Blog Talk Radio, or go onto my website, LorraineNeidhart.com. And we will begin to work next week with, guess what? The sun. So the moon is your strength. The moon's message is, especially for you personally, everyone looks at the moon and sees something different. She's both challenging and somewhat storming the heavens. But she also shows us what is on earth. They're lovers. So may the moon be the beloved teacher for this week, or however you need it. And remember, you can just look at some tarot cards on Pinterest, or hopefully a friend will buy a set of tarot cards, and you can start meditating and working with this powerful energy. Till next week, bye-bye.
It's go time at Dunkin' Donuts. Get your day going with 2 bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches on croissants for $5. They're perfect with a rich, signature smooth Dunkin' coffee. America runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary, plus applicable taxes. Limited time offer. Dunkin's Cold Brew is a unique coffee experience. And new sweetened salted cold brew comes sweet, with salted whipped topping for a cool new take on cold brew. America runs on Dunkin'. Price of participation may vary. Limited time offer. Very limited time offer. Very limited time offer. Very limited time offer.